Holy entropy. What's that? Hi there, I'm Dr. Sean Devine, and in this presentation I want to provide you with a simple understanding of entropy that is completely consistent with the entropy of thermodynamics. The understanding provides the tools to explore how an ordered living system can be maintained distant from equilibrium. In simple terms, the entropy of a natural system is just the number of computational bits specifying the thermal or the momentum states of the system multiplied by a factor close to 10 to the minus 23. So let's start. How to understand entropy? By seeing the implementation of natural laws as a computation undertaken by the universe, and where the number of bits in the computation is a measure of the entropy. You can't get something for nothing, so says the second law of thermodynamics, because the entropy of the universe is always increasing, driving the decay that surrounds us. You can never win, so says the second law. At best, you can only break even. The decay that we experience is explained in terms of the increase in entropy, delta S, of the entropy measure of Clausius. Delta S is equal to the heat flow divided by the temperature. Ultimately, even the sun will run down. But there are differing views about entropy. What is it? There's the probability approach of Boltzmann and Gibbs. These are inconsistent, but they give the entropy for non-interacting molecules at equilibrium as Boltzmann constant times the natural log omega, where omega is the number of microstates in the system, the number of ways the system can be rearranged. Then there's the entropy of Shannon's information theory. That's denoted by H. It's a measure in bits. It's equivalent to the minimum number of yes-no questions needed to identify a message in a set of messages. Where the message is about the instantaneous microstate of a natural system, in the set of all arrangements, Shannon's entropy with the multiplier Boltzmann constant times the natural log of 2 gives the Boltzmann entropy as follows. These entropies offer insights into the microscopic behavior of a system, but they're inadequate for systems far from equilibrium, or they use convoluted arguments to explain the second law of thermodynamics. On the other hand, the algorithmic understanding of entropy, the one I'm giving here, makes sense of it all. But first, we need to understand order and what it is, how to quantify it, and its relationship to entropy. So, what is order in the natural world? Order is embodied in structures that are simpler to describe. It's as simple as that. Here we have a picture on a screen of a camera, all white picture, and then we have a random array of pixels in the picture. If it's a 1 megapixel screen, the maximally ordered image can be represented by a string of zeros, where each zero represents a white pixel. And this requires about log to the base 2 of 1,000,000, because it's a 1,000,000 megapixel screen, and that requires only 20 bits. While a random image, the one on the right, requires each of the pixels to be specified, and that it requires more than 1,000,000 bits. The one on the left is ordered, described by 20 bits. The one on the right is disordered, described by 1,000,000 bits. Then what about order in the natural world? Order is embodied in structures that are simpler to describe. But how do ordered structures like a leaf arise in the natural world? Well, the DNA in the leaf cell contains a set of instructions. Provided resources are available, these instructions undertake a real-world computation that generates another cell. The critical understanding is that allowing for units, the bits in the DNA copying algorithm with the bits from external resources measures the entropy change that occurs as a cell replicates. The computational bits that generate the structure are then a measure of the entropy change. So the real world algorithmic entropy H of a microstate in a system is the number of bits in the reversible program P that generates the microstate from an initial state. However, real-world computations require the instructions to be self-delimiting. They can't have end markers. From Landauer's principle, each bit carries a Boltzmann constant times the natural log of 2 times the temperature, joules of energy. The algorithmic entropy then is the information that's embodied in the states. But a laboratory computer can simulate a real-world computation to within a constant because both are what are called universal Turing machines. So the number of bits, the information needed to shift one state to another, is the same in the lab computer as in the real-world computer, as the simulation constant cancels. Natural ordered, low entropy structures are also simpler to describe. Ordered structures in the natural world. They're ordered on the screen of life, so to speak, and disordered structures are those at equilibrium. So on the left we have an ordered tree, specified by the DNA growth algorithm and the external inputs that are fed into the growing tree. And the disordered state is on the right. After the energy is turned off, the tree decays to a random pile of basic chemical constituents, and that's the equilibrium that it returns to on death. The algorithmic entropy then is the number of instruction bits needed to generate a structure, whether it's the tree or whether it's the disordered equilibrium structure. There's a bit carrying energy. Bits characterizing stored energy configurations are potential entropy only. These characterize low temperature ordered systems distant from equilibrium. It is only when the stored energy is released that it becomes kinetic energy. Then these bits become actual thermodynamic entropy, increasing the temperature. From Landauer's principle, the reversible transfer of one bit to a thermal state at temperature T is equivalent to the transfer of 10 to the minus 23 T joules. The increase in S, the thermodynamic entropy, is the number of thermal bits times this multiplier. The real-world computations generate the microstate by a reversible algorithm. If all bits are tracked, bits are conserved, as there is enough information to reverse the process. The number of bits is the same as if the algorithm halted on completion of the process. Just like energy, algorithmic entropy is a property of the overall macrostate, but it's actually embodied at a particular microstate at an instance. For an isolated system, as the algorithmic entropy of a particular microstate is the same for all, it becomes a property of the system as a whole. Archibald Wheeler talked about the universe as it from bit. Seth Lloyd said that the universe can be formed from 10 to the 120 operations on 10 to the 90 bits. Bits are discrete packages of energy that carry instructions that change the states of the universe. And there's a bit coming in. The second law can be interpreted as a process by which order in nature becomes disordered over time. In entropy terms, the entropy S of a system and its surroundings increases for all but reversible processes. The change in S is the change in heat into the system divided by the temperature and it's always greater than or equal to 0. Bits specify the position, the momentum, and stored energy states of structures, including the energy states of molecules. And also, the program bits specify the interactions between the structures. The second law of the thermodynamics sees real-world computations changing order to disorder, releasing energy. Bits and structures, such as hydrogen and oxygen, are modified by the program bits to generate water. And here we see a picture. Hydrogen and oxygen molecules on the left are converted by a program to water as steam on the right. The temperature on the left is T1, the temperature on the right is T2, and it is much higher. And this can be expressed by the computation U with program P operating on the water and the oxygen to produce steam. The algorithmic entropy H of the hydrogen and oxygen at the start plus the bits in the program that generates the steam is equal to the bits in the final state of steam plus a small residual number of bits to ensure reversibility. So this means the entropy of the steam, the algorithmic entropy of the steam, is very much greater than that of the water and the hydrogen at the start. In probability terms, while strictly reversible, the chances of steam reverting back to hydrogen and oxygen in the life of the universe is negligible. The probability actually is given by the number of bits in the initial state to the power of 2 divided by the number of bits in the final state to the power of 2. When reversibility is lost, the overall entropy increases even more. So the bits HR, specifying reversibility, become heat as the memory of the process is lost when reversibility is lost. Now we want to look at order and randomness. Ice is an ordered state generated by far fewer bits. That is, it's got a lower algorithmic entropy than a disordered state of water such as steam. The structural order in ice carries stored energy. In an isolated system, the string specifying a typical microstate in an equilibrium configuration is random. Configurations distant from the equilibrium one are ordered and have a much lower algorithmic entropy than the typical random configuration. The algorithmic entropy is valid for far from equilibrium situations, but it needs to be remembered that it is only the thermal bits, the bits in the momentum states, that characterize the thermodynamic entropy. Where does order come from? The answer is natural replication processes create order. Replication creates order because it triggers a chain reaction that consumes energy and resources until the carrying capacity is reached. A cluster of N replicated cells is more ordered than their chemical constituents. The cluster is simpler to describe algorithmically. For example, the DNA algorithm is of the form, from the nutrients around, repeat this cell N times. The bits in their copying algorithm, the bits in this process are the bits in the copying algorithm plus about log to the base 2 of N. Now I want to talk about the archetypical replicating system, and that is one bacterium, a red dot, in a soup of nutrients. And here we have the replication process taking place. The one bacterium doubles and so on until finally all the resources are used up. And then there'll be billions of bacteria, and this happens when the bacteria system has reached its carrying capacity. So replication processes, such as this one bacterium, counters the second law of thermodynamics by using energy in the resources and in the sun to generate myriads of the same structure. Replication also explains how life is maintained distant from equilibrium. And here we see the regeneration process. Resource bits flow in, bacteria regenerate. And here we see the resources coming in, the bacteria regenerating, forming a far from equilibrium state. But an essential part of the process is that bits as heat and decay products need to be ejected. And that's how a system is maintained distant from equilibrium. This allows us to see the cost of maintaining a natural system distant from equilibrium. The stored energy and heat energy entering the system must equal the degraded stored energy and the heat energy ejected. At the same time, the bits entering the system, specifying the heat and stored energy states, must equal the degraded resource bits and heat bits ejected. Energy in must equal energy out, and the bits in must equal the bits out, and the temperature adjusts so that these two equalities are satisfied, maintaining the system distant from equilibrium. The approach provides a simple model that works even for systems distant from equilibrium, as just discussed. We see the thermodynamic entropy as the number of bits times Boltzmann constant times log 2 that are in the thermal state of the system. And the second law is about bits in the stored energy state, these are potential entropy, becoming bits in the thermal state, where they become realized as thermodynamic entropy. Later videos will show how variation and selection processes generate natural order, and also how an economy can be seen as a system distant from equilibrium, a system of replicating agents, themselves replicating cells, and how this system can be maintained. Thanks for listening, and check these references.